Mike Sullivan catching some heat on his decision to go with Lars Eller and Drew O'Connor in overtime over any of the big guns in Crosby and Malkin. Is he catching too much heat for that decision? And is that something the Penguins have done regularly? What goes into that?
Well, Sidney Crosby usually starts overtime for the Penguins. And excuse me, he had a skate issue that couldn't be resolved last night. I actually don't have any problem, even if Crosby didn't, with starting Eller. It didn't look good last night because he was on the ice for the goal against. But I believe they are outshot 12-6 in 3-on-3 when Crosby's on the ice. And they have allowed 6 goals in overtime this season when Crosby's been on the ice. They've also allowed the first goal. They've allowed the first shot to score, I believe, 8 times. The 6 is in that mix. So, yes, I think it's very fair to criticize Mike Sullivan and the coaching staff for the fact that they are so bad in 3-on-3. But specific to last night, given the skate issue, given that we've seen when Evgeny Malkin's been out there, he's not really a productive 3-on-3 player, and him and Carlson can be pretty careless with the puck at times. Look, and that's risk reward. Excuse me. So I think he's taking a little too much heat for that very zoned in specific, but. To me, last night was a microcosm of the Penguins season. They would not be in the position they're in, which is fighting for a playoff spot and basically not only having needed a lot of help, but also needing to still pretty much be flawless, at least lose in overtime. If it isn't for the fact that their power play has been abysmal and their play or their performances in overtime / shootout have been worse. If they were just bad as opposed to awful in either one, they're probably in third place pretty comfortably. So I think you blame the coaching staff for that. I think you blame management for the team they assembled. And I think that's fair.
Well, also at some point, Rob, the players themselves deserve some measure of blame, which obviously you're not immune to lobbing out if necessary. But that kind of leads me to my question, which is they have gotten help. In order to have this rise in the standings, you need to play well while everyone else around you doesn't pick up any points. So check that one off for them. But what do you think is the biggest reason why they've been able to play better? To me, maybe just to make it as simple as possible, have the Penguins just actually played like the Penguins?
Yes, but I also think that it was a deficient roster. There wasn't room. So look, to be fair to Kyle Dubas and Mike Sullivan, maybe more Mike Sullivan, this is a roster that's been reassembled and reassembled by 3 different managers over 4 off seasons. So they have been disjointed and they've looked that way. It's also an old roster that became older over the summer because Dubas really went out and tried to sort of beef up with some veterans. I thought then, as I do now, that Crosby and Malkin, specifically, and Letang, my experience with them is they actually prefer when younger guys get put with them because it sort of brings out something in them as opposed to veteran guys. I don't think it's an accident that you've seen Mike Sullivan have the option of using more younger players on his roster since the Jake Gensel trade, and that it has benefited guys like Evgeny Malkin to some extent. I think you've seen that with P.O. Joseph, who's a defenseman that's sort of been toiling in a third pairing role, but now has been in a top pairing and has been a lot better. I think they needed some youth, and I think they needed to be willing to learn with those mistakes. Had they done that earlier in the season, and they didn't have the roster flexibility to do that, I think they'd probably be in a better spot now. But I think they've played more like the Penguins. But Frank, as you pointed out, and I think they have taken advantage of an opportunity that's come to them, and I give them full marks for that. And it may be enough to get them into the playoffs, but they're where they are because of the way they played in the first, 65 games of this season. I guess if you're a Penguin fan, and I cover the team, so I don't have a stake in this. I thought 3 weeks ago as much as they could, given the contract situations, there were going to be a lot of changes, but I didn't think there were going to be any big ones. Now I think that's off the table because I think this gives them sort of the thing they were looking for to say, you know what, we were better than our record suggests. The end of the year showed it, and we'll take another run at this. And taking another run at it the way they took it going into this season, to me would be a mistake. That doesn't mean I say trade everybody, but I think they definitely have shown they need some younger legs with this group.
You kind of answered it quickly. Just is this a team that could potentially be fooled by a 10-game period of time that they just made up a lot of ground? Or do you see, like, I look at Evgeny Malkin these last number of games, say, holy, like, where was that? Is that still in there somewhere? How can they find a way to pull that out?
Yeah, I mean, I think Malkin's a great example, right? Michael Bunting's been perfect for Malkin. He's been a net front guy that takes away a lot of the physicality that Malkin's had to absorb this year. If you look at Malkin's metrics, Malkin should have more goals and points, but he's been playing with insufficient wingers until the last, month. That's what I mean. Maybe they don't need more proven players. Maybe they just need some young guys that can take some of the responsibility of the physical nature off. But I think they're going to keep this group together as much as they can and take another run at it. And I think this is going to sort of affirm that decision for them, even if they don't make the playoffs by a point or two. I think they'll convince themselves of this now.
Another guy who's been massive and a part of this turnaround is between the pipes, Alex Nedeljkovic taking over for Tristan Jarry in that starter's role. Talk about how big of an impact Ned's had on this team, because the numbers are certainly good.
Yeah, they have been. He's been fantastic. They love that he's a battler. And I don't, every time I hear a coach say that about a GM, or excuse me, about a goaltender, that he's a battler, that doesn't give up on plays, that to me is partly credit to that goaltender. And maybe, well, are we also not getting that from the other guy?
It's like the ultimate backhanded compliment.
Yes.
Like, it's like almost like you're not technically any good, but at least you try hard.
Well, right. Now, I think that is a bit of a disservice to Nedeljkovic because, this is a guy that's a second-round talent, right? And I think he is a battler, but I don't think he's a guy that's bereft of NHL talent. I think he's a guy that can wear down. I think for the Penguins, if you're looking at their goaltending situation, last night would have been a perfect game for them to give to Tristan Jarry, right? You got 2 days between the big game against the Red Wings, getting Nedeljkovic fresh. Because you beat Tampa, you had a little bit more wiggle room, right? And they still went with him. I think that to me says a lot about where they're at with Tristan Jarry. And I don't know that they can get out from under that contract this summer, but I know it's one that they had reservations about to begin with. And Tristan has had difficult second halves in 3 of the last 4 seasons. And or at least stretches, and that has to be a concern for a guy you gave 5 years to just 10 months ago, 9 months ago, excuse me.
Yeah, well, Ned's come through for them, and they'll probably need a couple more big starts. 4 more games left for the Pittsburgh Penguins in their playoff push. Rob, appreciate the time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, gentlemen.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.